Hello and welcome to the tutorial on making the Mokume Gane beads. Just a quick history of what Mokume Gane is. Traditionally, it's a Japanese technique that was used for metal forming. So normally when making large swords like samurai swords, it was a decorative technique that made the metal appear like it had a wood grain. So it's just a really pretty effect, which we are going to be adopting using the polymer clay and obviously bright colours to create a really pretty bead effect. So yeah, all you're going to need for this tutorial is your polymer clay, a little cutter, and then a cocktail stick or your sculpting tools. Okay, so to begin with, you're going to need 3 different colours from your polymer clay. Now, I would suggest going for a really light colour, a dark colour and something in between. For this tutorial, I've gone with really wild, bright, wacky colours that I wouldn't necessarily wear, but it will hopefully emphasise the technique and you'll be able to see clearly what we're doing here. So the first thing you want to do is break off some of your polymer clay and then flatten it. So they're fairly even in size. You literally use, if you've got a sculpting tool, you can use this as a mini rolling pin to get that flat effect. And then all we're going to do is create a sandwich with those 3 layers. From there, you're going to just pat it down a little bit to get rid of any bubbles and air. And we're going to start cutting it. So I'm going to use one of my cutting tools. I'm going to cut it into sections. They don't have to be perfect. It can be quite rough. So I've just created 8 sections there. And now I'm going to sandwich these sections together. It's going to create quite a tall tower. Again, I'm going to now push it down to get rid of any bubbles and condense it. Quite a nice effect. It reminds me of licorice all sorts. And now comes the really fun part. You're going to take your cutting tools and your sculpting tools and you're going to push down randomly with a variety of your tools. And what this is actually doing is pushing the layers through each other, and this is going to create a really nice effect. Not just yet, but trust me on this one. So I might take a cutting tool as well and put some cuts in that way. Once I've done that, I'm happy with the effect. I'm pushing it back together again, getting rid as much as possible of any gaps, making sure everything is still pushed together as one piece. Now I'm going to actually go back and add a few more in terms of detail. Just want to make sure that I get a nice Mokume Gane effect. Okay, so now it's time for the results. We're going to turn your piece of polymer clay on its side and use one of the cutting tools to cut into your clay. And you see this sort of layered ring effect. This is what I mean by a wood grain effect is what you're getting. And with that, you can just create layers each time. I'll show you back here actually. There's slight variations in them, but a really nice sort of natural organic pattern coming through. And that's how you achieve the Mokume Gane effect. Every time you do it, it's going to be slightly different. If you're using different colours, obviously the effects are going to be different as well. But yeah, it'd be great to see what you can achieve. So once you've got your polymer clay in the Mokume Gane pattern, the next step is to turn them into beads. Something like this one. So again, I'm going to pick that up. These are handmade beads. They're not going to look factory made, so they may have imperfections, but that makes it more unique. But to get to this stage, we need to take your sheet of patterned polymer clay and roll it into a sphere shape. It's quite straightforward doing this. You're literally going to use the palm of your hands to roll it up till you get a nice spherical shape, something like that. And the way I would do this is in batches. I would take all my sheets of clay, turn them into balls first, and then once I've done that, I'm going to create the hole so that it's actually a bead. But I'm going to jump straight to that stage for you guys now. Ideally, you've got one of these tools. If not, don't worry, you can use a cocktail stick. It's going to do exactly the same thing. So you'll want the sharp pointy end of the tool. Just be really careful not to stab yourself with it. You're going to take the ball and you're going to gently push the tool through. If you just jab it in, it's going to really misshape the polymer clay. So you just slowly sort of thread it through, almost twisting it through till it comes out the other side. Now, if I was to take that off as is, the hole is going to be really, really tiny, and it will probably shrink a little bit in baking as well. So to thread that onto anything to make a piece of jewellery is going to be very hard work. So to make your life a little bit easier, the way I create a bigger hole is just to use my finger to roll the bead around, and what will happen is, especially this end will become a larger hole where I've put that pressure on there. So if you look now, it's a much bigger hole for you to be able to thread something through. The other end is still quite small, so all you do is switch it around and do the same on the other side. And don't panic if your bead misshapes a little bit. Like I said before, the polymer clay can be reshaped. That's the beauty of it. So we'll deal with that once we're happy with the hole. I'm happy with that. I'll definitely be able to thread something through there now. So what I'm going to do is just slightly reshape the bead until I'm happy with it. Yep, that's fine by me. And then just repeat that process for all your pieces of polymer so that you should have a nice set of beads. You're going to need about 10 beads for the necklace task, which is the next session along. So if you have run out of polymer clay, it's fine. You just repeat the process, start the Mokume Gane process again, and then create the beads. Once you have got to the bead stage, what I would suggest you do is place it straight onto your baking tray so that you don't have to keep picking them up and handling them. Bake them using the instructions and the guidance on your polymer clay set, because different companies will have different recommendations about how long they should be in the oven for. Once you've got them out, obviously allow them to cool before you touch them. Use oven gloves to get the tray out of the oven. If you're not confident with the oven, maybe ask an adult to do that for you. And then once it's cooled, you've got your beads to be able to then thread onto a necklace. If you wanted to get the glaze effect on your beads without using the Sculpey varnish, now would be the stage, once they're dry and cool, to add a clear nail varnish onto them and then allow them to set as well. If you're doing that, just make sure you paint all the edges and sides apart from the bottom. You'd have to wait for the first coat to dry, then flip it over to do the bottom. I've seen lots of students in the past, they'll try and varnish the whole lot, pop it down somewhere, and then the varnish acts like a glue and you can't pick it up again without damaging something. So just do it in stages if that's something you want to do for your beads. And so here is my final result with my little batch of Mokume Gane beads. I think what's really nice about this technique is that the patterns that come through add another dimension to that item. So although you've got the same colours and the same tones on each bead, each one has its own unique little pattern, which just helps to make your handmade jewellery much more unique and bespoke. It's a nice effect.